and welcome back to Fireside and Fairytale. Today I am going to be giving you an overview of my knitting, what I've achieved recently and what I'm working on. So this is Monday the 7th of October 2024 and we're definitely into the autumn here at Apple Tree Cottage. The leaves are falling off the trees and it's not too cold at the moment, but certainly I have changed into winter woolies, and that is why I am doing a knitting program today. Now I actually love wearing bed socks, and I needed another pair, so I spent 3 days knitting up fluffy bed socks, and I wanted them pretty quickly because the temperature had dropped, and so they are just absolutely plain knit. That's quite unusual for me these days, but I just loved racing through and getting them knitted up. And I used for these King Cole Merino blend 4-ply and Rowan Kidsilk combined, and the Kidsilk makes the fluff. I used 2.5 millimeter needles, DPN, for these, but you don't necessarily have to go by my tension. Everyone's tension is different, and it's really just a matter of getting the correct number of stitches per inch in order to get the right size. So I'm really enjoying wearing these. On my to-do list was something, more socks that I started in the summer and then had a break from these, and then came back to them. And these are possibly going to be worn in my winter boots. Just an extra pair of socks keeps your feet warm and just makes everything much more comfortable. These were inspired by Nina. I'll show you her book in a minute, that I also use, but I did sort of vary it. I made the top rather more my own, and the wool is different. It's a different mix of wool, and I made the toes really quite long and they are very colourful and a bit dotty, but I'll definitely get the wear out of them. So Nina, Socks from Around Norway, is primarily the book that I use for sock knitting so far anyway. I've got a whole pile of books to show you today, so I'm showing you books as well as knitting, and I hope you'll be inspired or edified by my way of doing things. Her name is Nina Granlund Saether, I think is how you pronounce it. She's Norwegian and I just love her. I'm always ticking the like on her Instagram photographs that come up on my feed daily. And I did show you socks that, these ones that I knitted earlier in the year, and I just wore them to bits, and one day I woke up and there was a big hole in the toe, and so I began all over again. And this is where I am with my Mark II of Nina's, I call them Nina's socks. I missed out the curly bit at the top, but I just love this cross design. I put a heel in red, and here is the other one here. As you can see, I like working 2 socks at the same time, because I'm less likely to go wrong, and it's just so lovely to finish with a pair of socks rather than finish with one sock and have to start all over again with the other one. And again, I've made the heel in red rather than white, so I've varied it a little bit. And so I'm thoroughly enjoying knitting these, and they should knit up very, very quickly. The wool that I've used for these, being Scottish, is Shetland. I use Jamieson and Smith. You can also buy yarn from the other big Shetland company, which is simply called Jamieson's. Evidently the two Jamiesons are not related, though presumably distantly they are. And these socks are knitted up in 2-ply lace weight, and the size of needle I have used, DPN, is 2mm. So it is finer. It will make a finer sock. It's not a chunky sock, but that's nice just for sitting inside my boots as the winter comes on. Now the other small items that I've been working on, not quite so recently, I'll get back to them, are mittens. This mitten here is my own design. I've called it a Starlight Mitten. I have one done, and I've made a long cuff on this one, which gives that extra bit of knitting to either bring up your wrist or just fold to give a cozier wrist. And I am using again Jamieson and Smith for this mitten, and I think I've got the weight. It's not as fine, I think it's 2-ply jumper weight. All these labels here. And I finished the one, I'm doing them in rather a nice mix of a sort of caramel colour and what I would call maroon, and they're coming up very nicely. And as I say, that's my own design. There's the wrist of the next one. Now, I was looking at this type of mitten for quite a while, I have to say, and the book had kept jumping out at me for months and months, and I finally got round to buying it. This is Anne Bardsgard, Selbu Mittens. Pardon my lack of pronunciation. I'm always moaning at other people's lack of pronunciation. What a hypocrite. Here I am. It's Bardsgard is her surname. And as I say, this book kept jumping out at me, and it's marvellous, absolutely marvellous. Now I have to tell you, sometimes I am disappointed. I will look at a knitting book and I will think, yes, I have to get that, and it will go and it'll be delivered, and great excitement, and I'll unwrap it, and then I'll be disappointed. It won't be as comprehensive as I want, or I just might not like the patterns. But I have to tell you, I'm just obsessed with this book. It's a book that's so wonderfully written and so interesting that you could just buy it and not knit anything and just enjoy it. It goes into all of the history, and what I love about it, or one of the things I love about it, is that she actually talks about the village. She talks about the real tradition, and I have to say I love it when it's real tradition. And she refers to the ladies in the village and has a little bit of biographical rundown on them. So the whole thing becomes alive, and you feel really connected to these people and what they did. And so I highly recommend this book. It's beautifully laid, absolutely beautifully laid out. and it's completely inspirational. So, having read this book, I think twice from cover to cover, I'll show you one there as well. I took the plunge. It was really difficult to decide which mitten I was going to go for, because there's so many. Now, living in Scotland, in the UK, obtaining Norwegian wool sometimes isn't that easy, and the same with French wool. For whatever reason, we won't go into that. So it took me I had to be patient, and it took me a little bit of time. But again, Anne refers to the traditional wool that you would be using, and so I thought I'd experiment, and I'd try two types. So the first type is the Rauma garn and Finull, which I think I did actually manage to obtain through a company in England, and it's 100% wool, of course, Norwegian, and absolutely lovely. It's so soft, beautiful. So here we are with the Rauma garn in the traditional black and white, and I am using 250mm DPN, but as I say, don't necessarily go by my gauge, and this is as far as I have knitted, and I really need to begin the other one, because like socks, I like to finish a pair at the same time. And I'm just loving this. I just loving this, following the charts through. Now, I also obtained, just clear a little bit of room here. I also obtained Rauma garn in the red maroon colour with the white, and that will make a nice lot of mittens. I have family who really appreciate my knitting, and for Christmas I'm hoping to have some mittens for family members. The other yarn I got through a French company, and this took a while to come, and that is in English you would say ask, A-S-K, but it might be pronounced slightly differently. In Norwegian it probably is. And again, a lovely red, this time a sort of what I would call a Rowan Red, and off-white, definitely off-white, almost a very pale beige, and we'll be spinning these up, winding them and getting them into balls, and so quite a lot of knitting in front of me for that, and so very exciting with my socks and with my mittens. Now, I have a number of other books. Let me just show you. When I started out with mittens, I have to tell you that, remind people, if you've listened to a previous episode of mine, you probably gathered in some of my history. I learnt knitting at school when I was 6 years old. We would stand in a circle round Mrs. Lyle, who was a very strict primary school teacher, and there would be about 5 of us standing in a circle around her, and she showed us how to knit to a very basic extent. Then my mother also took up for a while and gave me a bit more knitting. She certainly did some knitting, and I can remember the first thing I ever knitted well enough to give as a present were yellow egg cozies for my beloved grandfather, and I must have been about 7 years old at that point. And then it all sort of merged or went into sewing and embroidery at that point, and some crochet, because I moved school and there was no more knitting. I went south to England, and it was embroidery was the thing that was taught at school. And so I didn't come back to knitting until my daughters were in their teens, and I'm so glad at that point I did, and I've been knitting ever since. But I'm not a brilliant knitter by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a slow knitter, and it takes a great deal of, it's taken a lot of years to start to become proficient. And I have to say, I do marvel at some of the knitters on YouTube. Are just completely wonderful. So, when did I start mittens? Well, I started mittens when I purchased Tasha Tudor's old-fashioned gifts, and she has a pattern in here for a mitten, and this was really pattern mittens. That was what got me started. I'd known Tasha Tudor from when I was a little girl. I had her book of prayers, and so she was familiar to me years and years ago. That would have been 60 years ago, more than 65 years ago. So she was a familiar and beloved figure to me, and I loved this because the instructions are more of recipe than a pattern as such, and this was a very good way to learn knitting and patterns. And here we are with them. Now, I have been knitting a sweater for when I say a long time, I started it a long time ago. And I picked it up again recently because I would like to try. I had wanted to have it completed for last Christmas, but that didn't happen. But I'm hoping perhaps I might have it finished for this Christmas. And this is my own design, and I'm calling it Christmas Star, and it is inspired by a Norwegian cardigan that Kia of Kia's Bod had been wearing, and I like the basic idea of the white and then the red, but I made it much more elaborate, and that is the body, which is on circular needles. I'm making a steek, but the original it's my design, is the sleeve. I tend to find when I design my own garments, I start with the sleeve. It's less to knit, and I get a clearer idea of whether the design will ultimately work. So this first sleeve is complete, and I wanted to make it rather a nice idiosyncratic shape. It has quite a narrow sleeve for the inner arm, the lower arm, and then balloons into a rather more Renaissance type of shape at the top. And it is a mix of the Shetland or Norwegian stars. I'm using Jamieson and Smith 2-ply jumper weight, and I was also using some King Cole Merino blend 4-ply. So there's a bit of a mix in here actually, and these are the colours I'm using to make them nice and Christmassy. I have the other sleeve complete, and I've made a yoke top, which is, I'll just come in again because it's gone. So there we are. And I've made a yoke top. And again, there's a steek there. I'll be cutting that. And I've made a yoke top because I really like to have a cozy neck when it comes to become really cold in winter. So sort of bits and pieces. And the reason that it took me so long was because I had another couple of starts on the body and kept changing my mind. I wasn't sure about the body. I wanted to make it quite different to begin with. But in the end, with knitwear design, it shouldn't be too fussy. And so I decided the most pleasing aesthetic ultimate design would be one where I simply copied the sleeve on the body. And so finally, having started a couple of times, this was my third attempt, and I'm very happy with what I'm doing with it. So I've got fur cone lace in here, and another couple of different types of lace design going on here. The bottom of the sleeve was taken from a stocking out of Nina's Norwegian book. It's actually from a stocking top, so it would be around that way. And I thought, no, that would make a really nice wrist. Now, on the sleeve, I have put beads, little pearls, and also the wrist has lace. I love lace on wrists. It's sort of Mozart, isn't it? That type of era when they would have, and the gentlemen would have lace on their wrists as well as the ladies. And for that, I've used the Jamieson and Smith 1-ply cobweb wool, and the design of lace is out of this book, which I discovered through Tasha Tudor. She had mentioned this, that she used it. It's Classic Knitted Cotton Edges by Hewitt and Daley. And I've just love, I use this a great deal. It's lovely, it's all written out for you, and very good photographs. Even though they're black and white, they're very clear. And lots and lots and lots of lace designs for edgings. I'll tell you, there are 200 of them. So spoilt for choice, it's absolutely wonderful. And the one that I chose for the wrist for Christmas star jumper is number 14. So this hopefully, as I say, will be completed for Christmas. Now I love knitting lace. I like crochet lace, but I find knitted lace particularly satisfying. And let me just pop that on there. I have a number of books, and I'll probably do another program just dedicated to lace knitting. Here is one I like using. That's by Helen James, and I like this because it's again very clear, good photographs, and not only a chart, but she's written out the instructions as well, which I'm fine with both now, but originally I just went with the written instructions. And some lovely traditional Shetland knits in here. Highly recommend this book. Helen James Lace Knitting. And I had taken the pine cone from her book. Sometimes it's called pine cone, sometimes it's called fir cone. And I've been knitting a scarf, probably again for a present. My lace knitting, shawls and scarves are very highly appreciated by family members, and they're always asking for more. So here we are with this one, and I got so far with it, and then I came across another absolutely beautiful Shetland design. And there is a bit of a story about this. I did buy this through a lady on the internet. However, I then discovered that I had it already. And I have it in this wonderful, wonderful book. It's called Heirloom Knitting. And it's by a lady called Sharon Miller. And she went into all that you could about Shetland knitted lace. She published it in 2002, and I have to say, when I bought it, it was beyond me. I hadn't reached that level of ability, but I have now. Again, her layout is wonderful, and she has a great many of the traditional Shetland designs. I was put off at the time because, as I say, I hadn't learned how to read charts, but I have now. And the pattern that I'm now taking up, and I've got to about row 20, and this is a wonderful one called Antique Centre Pattern, which is a very, very dull name for a wonderful, wonderful pattern. And the beauty is that she has it properly charted out, and it's much easier. I have to say, it's much easier to read a very clear chart like that than it is to read something on your iPhone. So I was thrilled that I had it, and that I could be using this book. And she says herself, this unusual pattern, the Antique Centre pattern, gave me a bit of trouble to recreate because I was working from an old photocopy. It has interesting arrowhead shapes and was popular in the mid-1800s. Similar ones are on a lot of very fine Shetland lace. So she is, I have seen a version of it on an antique tray cloth, worked in a frame border of cat's paws, then surrounded by alpine edging too. So she has worked this. She says it was very popular in the mid-1800s, but she hasn't said where it was popular, whether it was actually a traditional Shetland pattern, but I'm taking it that it actually is. So with this, I'll see how I go. I'm absolutely loving doing it, and I will potentially do a couple of blocks in the antique, maybe 3 or 5 of this central beautiful pattern, and then go back to my fir cone for the other end. I'll probably do that to balance it up, and then I'll possibly do an edging around it. But that's sort of to the side. And have I anything else to say? No, I haven't. So many books. Here we are. Heirloom knitting, lace knitting, classic knitted cotton edgings, Selbu mittens, Tasha Tudor's old-fashioned gifts, and socks from around Norway by Nina. And would you believe I've been busy sorting out all my books and getting them into order and dusting them, because you know it's important to keep our books well dusted. Not that I live in a dusty house, I don't, but it's just lovely to be just sorting through my library of handwork books, and of course getting back to my knitting. And I'll just spend the rest of the afternoon working down from the heel to the toe on my red and white socks. So lovely to see you. Thanks to everyone who has subscribed, and I hope you have been inspired, and come back soon. Bye bye.